Hi, welcome to the One True Church. I'm Hugh Whitmore. Today's Bible teaching is entitled, The Power in Loving God. We know there's great comfort in loving God, and there's great satisfaction in having the discipline to love God in the way He requires. But there's also a great power in loving the one true God. And we do it by obeying the laws He sent with Jesus in the Gospels, and those laws include the 10 Commandments. And this is the greatest power available to a person on the earth, because it's a spiritual power, not a physical power. The physical and social power of those with great wealth or who run international corporations or who are presidents of countries, those are not as great as this spiritual power the Father gives us to those of us in His church. If you use this spiritual power as the Father teaches, it's within your capability to bring about the biggest event in the history of the world, an event the Bible calls the end times. The end times is a process, and it's a process of spiritual worship brought about by your individual efforts as God's elect and righteous. Your efforts can overcome all of the evil on the earth. By your actions, you can eliminate all suffering on the earth, both your suffering and the suffering of all innocent human beings. And God has given this incredible, wonderful, and important task. And if we fulfill this task, we will help the Father to replace this evil earth with an eternal, fully spiritual, renewed earth, where we will be rewarded with an eternity in our spiritual bodies. Jesus said in Matthew 22:30, "For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels of God in heaven." That will be us. And how glorious it will be to exist in a purely spiritual form. No pain, no sickness, no infirmities or handicaps, no worries about money or crime, and something to really look forward to, which is no desire or temptation to sin, because sin will not be present. And you have this great power from the Father right now, if, and only if, you do certain things and do them regularly. Yes, God loves us, but He's a good Father who disciplines us as needed to this particular task. It's time-consuming. It's difficult. It requires giving up certain pleasures, the pleasures of this world. It requires withdrawing from the world completely in some ways. It's hard to do. I know, and you know. That's why we're in this together. We can help and support each other in this difficult task. And there are 3 things we need to do to accomplish this task. 3 areas. First, you have to turn from the false teachings of the false prophet and false apostle Paul, also known as Saul of Tarsus. If you're hearing this about Paul for the first time, please look into the matter. Paul is definitely a false prophet. I have several videos on this issue. I have a book on Amazon called The Moment Time Stop that has 11 chapters on Paul. And others teach this truth now, if you prefer another source. You have to choose between Paul and Jesus, because Paul contradicts Jesus repeatedly, and Paul offers a false salvation by grace that Jesus never mentioned one time. Please look into the matter. For those of you who have come through that and understand that Paul is false, you've moved ahead greatly, closer to the heart of God, and He knows it, and you will be rewarded. The second area we need to accomplish in order to serve God in this way is that once you've moved away from Paul, you must joyfully return to living and preaching the kingdom teachings of the Gospels, which include the 10 Commandments. Because Jesus said in Matthew 24:14 that the last and final thing that has to happen before the end can come is, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. And that's the gospel of the kingdom, not Paul's false gospel of grace. The third area is that after you have turned from Paul and returned to the teachings of Jesus, you have to know what glorifying the Father actually means, because to know this is very motivating as a believer. And this process begins with what should motivate you in the first place, which is gratitude for the life God has given you. God made all of us with his spiritual power, and the Bible refers to this spiritual power as glory. And in Exodus 34:14, God tells us he's a jealous God, which requires us to glorify him by our obedience. First, glory is God's manifested power. When Ezekiel was given a vision of God's throne in heaven, he said in Ezekiel 10:4, "And the glory of the Lord went up from the cherub to the threshold of the house, and the house was filled with the cloud, and the court was filled with the brightness of the glory of the Lord." Amazing image. When God appeared to Moses in Exodus 24:17, the sight of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire. Glory is the spiritual energy or strength, the manifested strength of God. Next, God created humans to glorify him. Isaiah 43:6 and 7. "Bring my sons from afar and my daughters from the end of the earth, everyone who is called by my name, whom I created for my glory, whom I formed and made." So he formed and made us to glorify him. We owe that to him. And God needs us to send glory to him. David said in Psalm 29:1, "Give unto the Lord, O ye mighty, give unto the Lord glory and strength." That's the King James Version. So God is strengthened by us giving him glory. Jesus received glory from believers in Luke 4:14 and 15, where it says, "And Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit into Galilee, and there went out a fame of him through all the region round about, and he taught in their synagogues, being glorified of all." Jesus was glorified, that glory goes to the Father. All glory ends up with the Father. When you reach the end of the Bible, when God is fighting to increase his glory, to overcome the devil and earn his kingdom back, it says in Revelation 4:10 and 11, "The 24 elders fall down before him that sat on the throne and worship him, saying, Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power. For thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they are and were created." Here in Revelation, God is given glory, or spiritual power, by his worshipers. That's us. So to start summing up, God set up his plan of salvation, his plan of eternal salvation, which is a plan that can only be fulfilled by his rules that are in keeping with the physical laws of his universe. And these are the only rules and laws that can fulfill this plan and return God's kingdom and return it to its fully spiritual, perfect condition. So you have to ask yourself, do you love God enough to do the work that it takes, to make the necessary sacrifices, to fulfill his salvation plan, and fight to bring back the kingdom? I hope you do. I love God and Jesus so much that it preoccupies my mind most of the time. And I show my love for the Father and the Son regularly and steadily. But sometimes I don't do enough, and I'm sure you're in the same position. So I hope to encourage you to take what you've been doing and just do a little more. The time is now. The time is the end. We're in the end times. Do it now. Increase your love and support for the Father and his plan of eternal salvation. And why do a little more? Because in 2 Peter 3:10-12, we're told, "The heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. Therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you be in holy conduct and godliness, looking for and hastening the coming of the day of God. Hastening, of course, means to hurry up and bring to a conclusion sooner. We have the ability, as God's elect and righteous, to work harder for God and be rewarded by a quicker return of the Father and the Son. What a glorious prospect. God has given us this task, and only we can fulfill it. It's only Christian obedience, discipline, and love that can change the world. Nothing else can change the world. And God doesn't even want the earth saved or changed. He wants it replaced with the perfect, eternal, and spiritual kingdom He created for us in the first place before it was stolen by the devil. Please join me in obeying the Father and the Son just a little extra so that we can see this earth perfected in spirit for those of us who love the one true God and His Messiah.